They say every family has its secrets, but mine left theirs in a cage. It began with a sound no one else would have noticed, the faint clink of stainless steel, echoing off a clinic wall as I prepared for a routine surgery. The kind of sound you forget after years in medicine. But that day, it was the sound that started everything. The sound before betrayal took form. I didn't know as I aligned my instruments that my family was about to test what I truly believed about loyalty and life itself. The door slammed open. My sister's voice followed, bright, frantic, fake. Behind her, my parents trailed with sunglasses on their heads like tourists in someone else's pain. 3 leashes tangled around their wrists, 2 cat carriers banging against their knees. They didn't say hello. They said, "We need your help." And before I could even ask why, they were gone. 5 animals, no warning, no food, no instructions, just the assumption that I would say yes. Because I always did. For years I believed that was what family meant, obligation without reciprocity. They smiled when I paid their bills. They called when their pets sneezed, demanded free care, ignored my exhaustion. But this was different. This was a test dressed as kindness. They knew I'd never abandon something helpless. They weaponized that against me, and yet I took them in. Because I'm a vet, because I thought compassion still meant something. But compassion, when twisted by manipulation, becomes a leash. You don't realize you're being walked until it's too late. The days blurred. The barking never stopped. My clinic became a prison of sound and guilt. Clients stopped coming. Who wants to bring their cat to a madhouse of howls and fur? The invoices piled up. My family sent photos from Yellowstone. Smiles, sunsets, hashtags. And then, silence. No check-ins. No apologies. Just one message. Having so much fun we added 3 more weeks. Love you. Love. That word again, love. The lie we tell to justify exploitation. Something in me cracked that day. I looked at their animals, panting, restless, confused, and realized this wasn't about pets. It was about power. They'd built their comfort on my compliance. But every creature reaches a point when it stops flinching and starts biting back. This was that moment. The day their kindness died, and something colder, sharper, far more dangerous woke up inside me. That night I couldn't sleep. The clinic was too still, too heavy. Even the air felt judgmental, thick with the smell of disinfectant and betrayal. I sat in the dark, listening to the dogs whine from their kennels. Each sound was a reminder. They'd left them like luggage, and me like the storage room. On my desk, my laptop screen glowed faintly, a reminder of bills due, payments missed, and messages ignored. My sister's last text floated at the top of our chat. "Thanks, sis, you're the best." The timestamp mocked me. The words mocked me. I scrolled through her Instagram, a digital vacation diary built on my exhaustion. Her golden retriever, Buddy, had once been her trophy, the star of every post, the living proof of her perfect life. Now he lay here, wheezing in a cage, eyes dull, coat losing its sheen. He was fading, just like the illusion she sold to the world. That's when I realized. Families like mine don't love people, they love usefulness. They keep you around as long as you're functional. You're not a daughter, you're a service, a resource, a name they attach to their success stories until you stop making them look good. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. So I began documenting. Every sound, every vet record, every hour of unpaid labor. I started writing their betrayal into existence, like a case file for Judgment Day. Because that's what truth really is. Not emotion, not revenge. It's record keeping. Cold, clinical, undeniable. But still, one question haunted me as I stared at Buddy. How long had he been sick? Yvette and me ran the calculations, but the sister in me already knew. They'd ignored the signs. The same way they ignored me. That night, I stayed late. I fed them, cleaned their cages, whispered apologies to animals who didn't deserve any of this. And when the lights went out, the clinic seemed to breathe, the hum of machines and the slow pulse of something darker beneath it. That's when I felt it. The shift, the moment when obedience fractures into awareness. I wasn't their caretaker anymore. I was their witness. And witnesses, once awakened, are dangerous. By the 4th week, the illusion of family had crumbled into something uglier, a hierarchy of convenience. They were the takers. Wrong was how manipulators label the ones they plan to drain. They call you strong so they can feed on you without guilt. They weaponize your empathy and call it virtue. I walked back to my desk, opened my laptop, and began to type. Line by line, I documented every message, every date, every unanswered call. Evidence, not for them, but for me. Because truth without record is just memory, and memory can be gaslit into fiction. When the file was done, I printed it, held it, felt its weight, and I realized this wasn't weakness. This was awakening. Buddy whimpered once, low and faint, as if trying to speak the truth his owners refused to see. I ran tests through the night. Blood work, ultrasound, vitals. The numbers came back merciless. Kidney failure, long-term, preventable, neglected. I sat there watching the monitors and whispered to the universe, no more. From that moment I stopped being their victim. I became their reckoning. The night Buddy collapsed, the universe went quiet, like even the air knew it was witnessing something sacred and terrible. One moment he was breathing, faintly, rhythmically. The next his body convulsed in pain. I felt his heartbeat falter under my fingers. The sound of my own pulse roared in my ears as I grabbed my keys and carried him to my car. The drive to the emergency hospital was a blur of flashing streetlights and whispered apologies. "Stay with me, Buddy," I said over and over, the same way I used to beg my patients in surgery to hold on just a little longer. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone, that desperate, trembling edge between love and guilt. Inside the sterile brightness of the ER, I became two people at once, the vet, steady and clinical, and the sister, shaking and furious. The test results were merciless. Advanced renal failure. Months of neglect, maybe a year. He hadn't been lazy. He'd been dying. That realization hit me like a knife through glass. My sister's Instagram posts flashed in my mind, the smiling selfies, the fake captions about self-care and family love. She'd built her peace on my suffering and her pet's decay. When the vet handed me the estimate, $3,800, I didn't hesitate, I paid. Not because I had the money, but because the moral debt wasn't his to carry. Back in my car, I called Jess, straight to voicemail. "Jess, it's Sophie. Buddy's in renal failure. I just paid for his treatment. Call me back now." Silence. 15 minutes later, I sent a photo of the invoice. "This is what neglect looks like," I typed. The message turned blue. Read. Then nothing. That silence was the sound of a soul unmasking itself. The moment when I realized that in my family's world, love wasn't unconditional. It was transactional. As dawn bled through the windshield, I knew the truth. I was done paying interest on their apathy. And yet, when I looked at Buddy sleeping under a hospital blanket, something deeper stirred. Not vengeance, not yet, something purer. The instinct to protect life from those who exploit it. That's when I understood what dies in neglect isn't just an animal. It's the idea that empathy can exist without boundaries. The next morning, the world looked the same, but I wasn't. Something inside me had shifted, not like a burst of rage, but a cold, precise realignment. The kind that happens when a person stops asking why me and starts whispering, watch me. I stood outside the clinic, the early sun cutting through the fog, and I realized how long I had lived in emotional captivity, trained to forgive, to serve, to endure. My parents called it being dependable. My sister called it helping. But beneath those words was the same command: stay small, stay useful. I walked into my office, locked the door, and opened my sister's file, not Buddy's, hers, medical releases, payments, timestamps, text logs, all of it. For years, she'd relied on my professional license, my clinic resources, my supplies, all in my name. She thought kindness was eternal, that I'd never notice. But I noticed everything now. The silence from her and my parents had become a mirror, reflecting back the truth I'd refused to see. They didn't just neglect responsibility, they transferred it, on to me, over and over, until my own identity was buried under their comfort. I stared at Buddy's latest lab results on the screen. His creatinine levels were climbing, the damage irreversible. I could keep him alive a little longer, but not happily, and in that cruel, quiet realization, I saw the parallel. Buddy and I were the same. Loyal, obedient, slowly dying under someone else's story. So I did something I'd never done before. I called my parents, not to plead, not to explain, just to inform. "Buddy's condition is terminal," I said when my mother finally answered. "Oh no," she replied, voice flat like I'd told her the weather forecast. "Well, just do what you can until we're back." "Until you're back?" I asked. "You mean when the guilt's convenient again?" She hung up. That click in my ear was liberation disguised as pain. Because in that silence, I realized they couldn't hang up on who I was becoming. That evening, I made a decision. I wouldn't let Buddy die in despair, and I wouldn't let myself die in servitude. Before closing the clinic for the night, I whispered over his frail body, "They will never use me again." For the first time in my life, I meant it. Rebellion didn't arrive with shouting, it arrived with precision. Cold, surgical, controlled, the way a scalpel slices before healing begins. That night I crafted my message. Not a rant, not a plea, a revelation. I attached every document, every invoice, every text left on read. Proof of what they were. Users dressed as loved ones. Then I attached one final image. Buddy, frail but peaceful, sleeping under the clinic lights. The caption read, "He deserved presence, not performance. Some of us don't survive your kind of love." I sent it, not privately, publicly. Family group, extended relatives, friends, social media. Every curated illusion they'd built shattered with one click. Within minutes, my phone erupted. Missed calls, voicemails, texts. "How could you post that? Take it down, you're embarrassing us." Embarrassment, that was their fear, not loss, not guilt, shame, exposure. I didn't reply. I let the silence do what truth does best, echo. By morning, my sister finally messaged, "You went too far, it's just a dog, just a dog." I stared at those 3 words like they were a confession. Because they were. The kind of confession that reveals who a person really is when compassion costs effort. My response was only 5 words long, and I was just family. Then I blocked her. That single action felt like years of chains dissolving in my veins. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from release. I went to Buddy's side. His eyes opened weakly, and for a second he lifted his paw toward me. That fragile, trembling gesture. It was thank you. It was goodbye. I sat with him until his breathing slowed, until his body softened into peace. When the monitor flatlined, I didn't cry. I exhaled, because something inside me died with him. The part that believed love had to be earned through pain. As the first light of dawn touched the clinic floor, I whispered to him, "Rest now, my friend. I'll take it from here." That was the moment my war began, not against them, but against the conditioning that made me kneel. Now I want you, watching this, to write in the comments. No more leashes. Write it twice. Lock it in. Let the world know, the moment you stop being used, you start becoming real. Retaliation doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums quietly in the background of your new life. The hum of boundaries, the vibration of self-respect, the calm sound of a soul no longer begging to be seen. For the first time in years, I walked into my clinic not as their daughter, not as the family's fix-it machine, but as Dr. Sophie Hale, independent, unchained, and dangerously aware of her own worth. I took down the old family photos that lined my office wall, the ones my parents insisted I hang for warmth. I replaced them with framed medical charts of the animals I'd saved. Lives that mattered, lives that reflected what real love looked like. Consistent, selfless, present. Then I made another move. Every unpaid invoice, every favor disguised as family help, I forwarded to a lawyer friend. Pro bono. I told her, "I don't want money, I want accountability." It wasn't revenge, it was restoration. The restoration of energy, time, dignity. Days passed and the fallout began. My mother's friends stopped calling. My sister's social circle started asking questions she couldn't answer. My father left a single voicemail, just breathing on the other end. Not words, just breathing. That's how cowards apologize. Through silence. Meanwhile, Buddy's ashes arrived in a small white box. I kept it on my desk beside a tag that read, "Loyal till the end." It reminded me daily, loyalty without discernment is suicide. Each night I found myself talking to him. "You know, Buddy," I'd whisper, "they think I exposed them, but really I just revealed myself." And in that truth was liberation, the kind they can't steal, manipulate, or guilt away. I started something new after that, a small foundation, the Hale Trust. It offered free treatment for abandoned animals, especially those left behind by the selfish. The kind my sister represented. The press picked it up. A local paper called me the vet who chose truth over family. I smiled when I read that headline because that's exactly what I did. I chose truth. And the thing about truth, once it awakens, it doesn't stop. It devours everything false until only clarity remains. It took exactly 6 weeks for them to crawl back, not out of love, out of exposure, the kind that burns reputations like sunlight through glass. The first message came from my father, not an apology but a plea for damage control. "Your post hurt our image, Sophie. People are asking questions, take it down and we'll talk." Our image, that's what I was to them, not a daughter, not a person. A mirror they needed spotless, even if it meant breaking me to polish their reflection. I didn't reply. 3 days later, my mother called. Her voice was soft, trembling in that manufactured way parents use when manipulation fails. Sweetheart, can't we move past this? You've made your point. I almost laughed. My point? My point was a decade of servitude. My point was a dying dog who trusted me more than the humans who owned him. My point was that their version of love had always been conditional, and I had finally revoked their access. So I said only one thing. You can move past it. I'm moving on. She hung up. Again, a week later, Jess showed up at my clinic unannounced. Designer sunglasses, perfect hair, the smell of guilt disguised as perfume. You ruined my life, she spat. Everyone's calling me heartless. I looked up from my paperwork, calm, surgical. You didn't need my help for that. She blinked, like no one had ever dared speak to her in a tone that didn't bow. You think you're better than us now? She hissed. I set my pen down slowly. No, Jess, I finally think I'm enough. Her mask cracked right there. Not from rage but recognition. Because deep down she knew I wasn't the weak one anymore. As she stormed out, her last words echoed through the empty lobby. You'll regret this. But she was wrong, because regret belongs to those who live lies. And I no longer did. I turned off the clinic lights, locked the door, and whispered to the night. They only come back when the truth starts costing them followers. And for the first time in years, I slept without guilt. Grief doesn't vanish, it mutates. It becomes something new, sharper, wiser, cleaner. Like a blade forged in the heat of betrayal. That's what I became. Not broken, not bitter. Refined. It had been months since Buddy's last breath, but his presence lingered, not as a ghost, but as a reminder. Every time I passed his photo on my desk, I felt that quiet understanding between us, that some souls come into your life not to stay, but to awaken you. I started noticing things I'd been too numb to see before. The way morning sunlight touched the clinic walls. Warm, alive. The laughter of a child bringing in their puppy for the first time. The gratitude of strangers who saw compassion as a gift, not a resource to drain. That's when I realized this was family. The kind built through honesty, care, and presence. Not shared blood, shared truth. My old family still tried to call sometimes. My father even showed up once, pacing outside the clinic, holding an envelope like it could rewrite history. I watched him through the glass. He looked smaller now. Not physically, spiritually. The authority that once towered over me was gone. He didn't see me watching as he dropped the envelope at the door and walked away. Inside was a check, a large one, and a note that read, "Let's start over." I burned it, because you can't start over when you never started right. That night I sat under the same stars I used to beg under for peace, and I finally felt it. Not because they forgave me, but because I forgave myself for ever believing I needed their permission to live free. As the wind rustled through the trees, I whispered into the darkness. You were right, Buddy. Loyalty is sacred, but only when it's mutual. And in that stillness I knew I had crossed the threshold, no longer their caretaker, no longer their shadow. I had become something they could never understand, self-owned, and to you watching this right now, if you've ever been used, overlooked, or guilted into silence, let this be your awakening. Type it again below to seal it into your story. No more leashes, twice, boldly, without fear, because the moment you claim your own freedom, the world shifts, and every false bond, every chain of guilt, begins to crumble. That's not revenge, that's rebirth.